So it was announced on April 3rd that Maikelele, who is a founding member of the team now known as FaZe, is leaving the roster. And that leaves FaZe basically to find a fifth player with basically just a week to spare before Malmo. DreamHack Malmo. So today we're going to go over Maikelele and his future and any suitable replacements for him within FaZe. So let's get started. Firstly, let's talk about Maikelele. So this guy started the team and has now been pushed out over what I would call a decisive move to really remove him after his poor performances. For a long time, Maikelele had been seen as an overhyped player, especially after his average performance in NIP. Regardless, Maikelele was not the worst player on this team, and that honor really belonged to Fox, and then probably Dennis. But after the departure of Dennis, it became abundantly clear that if Fox was gone, then Maikelele was indeed the weakest link. And hey, I can't really say that he's bad, but he's just bad for this team. He was never really set up to succeed. In former teams, he had been either the dedicated AWPer, and in this team, he was just pushed to secondary AWPing or entry fragging. And sure, he can do those decently, but those aren't really his craft. They're not what he was doing for so long. So when it came down to it, the guy was just inconsistent. It wasn't what he was used to doing. He wasn't used to being a rifler. He was more used to being a very aggressive kind of AWPer. And now Fox was doing that role. So on FaZe, he didn't really have a place. He was just kind of a rifler who kind of did not lurking, but I guess a pseudo entry fragging sometimes, and then also doing pseudo lurking. But some games he would have a massive impact. So I'll just recall a game. It was his performance against Mouse Sports at the Cluj-Napoca Major. He actually did have, I think, about 6 clutches or something against them on Mirage. So he had a huge impact there. But other games, he would even fail to deliver 15 frags, which was really weird because he was considered a star player and he was on this team for that reason. So it's sad. It really is that he's gone because I like the guy, and I think if he has the right team around him, then he can succeed and he can be quite good. But there's no alternative team for him to really move on to now, and that's something that we got to discuss. So let me put it into perspective. In terms of Swedish teams, NIP have Pyth, and they probably won't be replacing anyone anytime soon. Probably not till the fourth quarter of this year. Godsent, which was the old team named Ancient, which is Pronax's team, consisting of himself, Schneider, Lee Crow, Palf, and Twist, seem to be sticking together, especially after they just signed contracts about 2 days ago because they just created the org. And Fnatic are currently the best team in the world with a huge record of achievements behind them, so I don't think they'll be making changes anytime soon. So at this stage, in terms of Swedish teams, there's almost nowhere for Maikelele to go. That is, of course, he has some sort of spot in Godsent that I don't know about that is lined up for him, but for right now, him leaving doesn't make any sense. I mean, if Michael really left FaZe out of his own volition, then why wouldn't he leave for some spot in another team? Do you get what I'm saying? It's just a weird move for him to leave. Now, if he doesn't join a team within the next month, then it seems to me that he was actually pushed out. I don't think that he left, and I don't know, we'll have to wait to his statement, but that's all that I'm going to say for now, is that he wouldn't have been pushed out, because he has to wait for NIP to give him a new opportunity, or Godsent have to switch players, and even Fnatic would have to hit some low set of form to really give him an opportunity to join any of those teams. And after his poor performance in FaZe, it would seem really weird for one of those teams to pick him up. I mean, I can understand Godsent, because if they pushed out someone like Lecro, that he would actually be an upgrade, but in any other team, I don't really see him being pushed out unless they get rid of Pyth from NIP. But even then, I mean, that's kind of a stupid decision because the guy's barely been in the team long enough for him to really be pushed out. Now, in terms of international teams, there's really no other international teams out there currently other than FaZe. So unless he moves to America, I can't really see where he'll go or what he'll do other than stream for the time being. And these situations that I've posed or require someone else messing up really in terms of being in their lineup than Maikelele actually succeeding and showing his worth and reaching new heights. With the exception of moving to America, where I believe that Maikelele would be a good AWPer on any Tier 1 NA team. So for me, it's just a strange move without very much thought for him to leave. So I guess let's see how it pans out, but to me it seems like he was cut from the team, and we'll have to see what his explanation is within the coming days. Now let's move on to FaZe. They're without a player, so that means that there's a spot to fill, and for me there's some obvious choices already, and the first would have to be Nico. Nico is by far and beyond the most talented player out there who can speak English and play for a team, delivering them performances that are consistent and fantastic at the same time. The problem is, though, that it would require mousesports giving up their star player, and it would require a huge buyout from the FaZe organization. Now, considering how much money they've spent on FaZe to actually get this team and how little mousesports actually want to give away Nico, I'd say it's not going to happen. I would love for it to, but since Nico is such a talented player who can pistol, AWP, and rifle, he's already the perfect replacement for Maikelele. In fact, he's an upgrade far and beyond. But he can also carry a team, Nico, and you can really depend on him to show up in online matches, in majors, and in any LAN tournaments. So he also currently leads mousesports, so he could even in-game lead, which is something that really FaZe haven't had down in terms of like in-game leadership and having consistency and people fragging really well. So to me, Nico is the perfect teammate. He can give you 30 frags, can use any weapon, he can in-game lead potentially, he speaks fluent English, and he's consistent in his performances. You can almost say that he's like the perfect fit for FaZe, and you keep hearing on and on people talking about how he should join FaZe, and I'd go so as far as to say that FaZe really need and deserve this guy. He is the player that they need, but unfortunately I don't think they're going to be able to get him. So whether or not he can be bought, or whether or not he chooses to leave mousesports is another thing, but I would peg him as the ideal replacement right now for Maikelele, or really even for Fox. And many other analysts such as like Thorin, Richard Lewis, and Yanko have pegged him also as their ideal replacement for FaZe. So to me, he's the number one pick. Now, unfortunately, we don't have an ideal world, so we have to come up with alternatives. And the next in line, I would have to say, is Chioma, who was formerly on Envious, the best French team in the world. Maybe not right now, but they were. And this guy, there's a couple of things that you got to know about him. So first of all, he has 2 major titles under his belt. And secondly, he was decent, if not good, at entry fragging, so he can fit into this team quite well. In terms of their very aggressive style, he's got that down. He's entry fragging, so he's kind of fitting a spot where Maikelele was before. He speaks moderately good English, more than enough really to talk and communicate his ideas. He can use the AWP if needed, but I don't think he's as strong as Maikelele in that department, but he's definitely a much better rifler. Now, the thing is about Chioma is that when he was on Envious, he was really like their most consistent player behind Happy. He was pretty much always delivering about 20 frags a game. He was getting the kills when needed. But the problem was, though, he dipped in his form towards the end of Envious, and he began to become a player that wasn't so reliable anymore. And FaZe may pick him up when he's in his worst form ever. Furthermore, Chioma, I felt, was pushed behind towards in his last days in Envious. He was really pushed out of the entry fragging role, and that was given to Apex. So that's why I really feel like he had little to no impact, and he wasn't playing spots that he was generally comfortable with anymore, especially on T-side. So I feel if FaZe picked him up, it's kind of like a 50-50 coin toss. He can be a decent player because in the entirety of his career he's been quite good, but I don't think he'll be like an insane player that will take him to new heights like Nico would, for instance. He had some form for a while, so he can reach consistency, I think, possibly with this team. But I think that was mostly when the rest of his team really did poorly. You could see like he was putting him on his back in Envious when they had shocks towards the end. He was kind of like their most consistent player other than Happy. And he did try and like put the team on his back. I think there was even a couple of games where he's getting like 30 frags. So if he can return to his glory days, then yeah, he's a great replacement, because he might even be an upgrade in form depending on how you look at it compared to Maikelele. But I look at it this way. There's no contract buyout as far as I know, but he might still be a part of Envious. But I feel if he left, I don't think that Envious would want him back, because I think Envious has problems of their own. I don't think they want Chioma back. He was a tier 1 player, so he has experience in majors and big tournaments, and he's a good rifler. He's in form in terms of like how you need a tier 1 player. It's not like he's left the game for like, 6 months and he's returning or anything like RPK or even Dennis. So yeah, he has experience. He's in form right now in terms of like being a tier 1 player. So he's probably their second pickup, and he's possibly an upgrade if you sacrifice the AWPing to Fox and then push Keyo to rifles purely. He can be a pure rifler, and I think he's better than Maikelele in that department. So finally, the last replacement would have to be Oscar from Hellraisers. Now, he's been really an interesting prospect for a while. So if you don't know about Oscar, he's a Czech professional who plays a lot of European FPL. He's known for his crazy AWPing, aggressive style, and overall puggy kind of performances. He's kind of like an overrated NA player, except he's actually good. So overall, he's a good player. He has incredible skill, and he can really carry a team, much like Nico. This is the type of guy who'll get like 30 frags with an AWP pretty much almost every game. I do feel, however, he isn't as consistent as Nico. Sometimes he does have matches where he doesn't really pull his weight, and I think he really does depend on the AWP a lot. Plus, he's a bit baity, according to Simple, but also I've just kind of watched his matches, and he is kind of like the last one with the AWP. Every now and again, he gets like 2 frags in like a 2v3 and then dies, so I suppose that does boost his stats a little bit. But I do, however, feel that he can put up performances with the AWP, or even a rifle that would exceed what Maikelele could do. So yeah, he is an upgrade. Now again, he speaks decent English, I would say enough to get by in this team, and probably better than Fox. He could generally fulfill a double AWP setup if needed, kind of like Maikelele could. And he can even rifle to a degree that I would say is good enough. My huge problem with him is that if you pick him up, you get a good rifler and an amazing AWPer, but you have to use this guy with the AWP. To me, that's where he succeeds the most. The problem is, though, that if you push him into the AWP, then you have Fox rifling, and Fox is like a bot when it comes to using rifles. I mean, he's not like super terrible, but he's just not a guy that you want on rifles. And if you push Oscar to rifles, then you're not using him to his full potential. So it's an instance of where if you're picking him up, you would either jeopardize Fox's position within the team or even Oscar's. Not to mention that Oscar is currently signed with Hellraiser, and by picking him up, you would require a buyout of a contract. So, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not so sure FaZe would be inclined to splash more cash on this lineup anytime soon. By picking him up, you're kind of jeopardizing another player or even himself in terms of how effective he can be on the lineup. So yeah, it's kind of a tough position. So I'll conclude with this. If FaZe can't get Nico, then ideally you would do this. You would pick up Chioma and to replace Maikelele, and if you could, then you push Fox out and then buy out Oscar's contract. This way you bring some resurgence to the team, so you get 2 new players, your old players have gone, you don't have any bots anymore, and you upgrade the talent. You spend some money, you make it worth your while, and it's a good investment in the long run. You up the skill in your team, you get people into better roles. I would, however, prefer Nico over this, but unfortunately, I feel like Mousesports just have Nico under lock and key. So that's my thoughts. I wonder what yours are. Leave them in the comment section below. Follow me on Twitter, the link is in the description. Like the video and subscribe, guys, and I'll catch you guys next time.